I died with my wrists bound in ceremonial silk. White. Threaded with gold. The colors of a pack I had never agreed to belong to. They had dressed me in their colors before I had ever said yes. And I had let them. But that was my first life. This is my second. And this time, I am not walking to any altar. My name was Sarah Calloway. I was an unmated Omega from a minor bloodline, which in the hierarchy of pack society meant one thing above everything else. I was valuable. Not valuable the way people are valuable. Valuable the way a rare resource is valuable. Quantifiable. Tradable. The kind of valuable that makes powerful people look at you and see an opportunity instead of a person. My designation had been discovered at 16. By 17, my parents had quietly entered me into the Omega registry. And by 23, I had been selected. Alpha counselor Raina Voss had not selected me out of love. She had selected me out of strategy. The Calloway bloodline carried a recessive gene linked to heightened Omega fertility. Her pack advisors had been very, very thorough in their research. I was not a person to them. I was a breeding guarantee, a political alliance, a solution to the Voss succession problem dressed in a ceremonial gown. And I had not known any of this in my first life. I had stood at that altar with my heart hammering in my chest, telling myself that being chosen by the most powerful alpha in the Eastern Territories was an honor. My mother had cried happy tears in the front row. My father had shaken hands with pack elders. Everyone smiled at me with that particular brand of warmth that contains not a single degree of actual heat. And I had let Raina's teeth find my throat. The mark burned like a brand. And the life that followed was one long, quiet suffocation. Raina was perfectly civil. She housed me, provided for every material need, introduced me at galas as her bonded mate with practiced pride. But she never once looked at me the way I had secretly hoped to be looked at. I was furniture. Exquisite, biologically useful furniture. She worked late, traveled often. And when she came home, she looked through me as if calculating something on a balance sheet I could not see. I died in year 4 of the bond, a complication of a forced early pregnancy. My body is failing to carry the air the council demanded. I bled out in a private medical wing of the Voss estate with no one holding my hand. Raina was at a council summit when the call came. Her aide told me later that she had paused the meeting for 3 minutes before continuing. 3 minutes! And now I was back. I stood in my childhood bedroom, age 19, 4 years before the marking ceremony, staring at my own hands in the afternoon light filtering through gauze curtains. My designation had just been formally announced that morning. My mother was downstairs on the phone, already making calls. I could hear her voice, bright and eager. A woman selling a future she believed was golden. I sat down on the edge of my bed, and I let myself feel all of it. The grief for the life I had wasted. The rage for the life they had stolen. And beneath both, steady as a heartbeat, the crystalline clarity of knowing exactly what was coming and exactly how to stop it. I was not going to the registry. It took me 2 weeks to find her. Lieutenant Cass Arden of the Western Border Guard was not the kind of person who attended council galas. She was not registered in the Omega pairing databases. She was an alpha, yes, but she operated entirely outside the political machinery that governed pack high society, which was precisely why no one had ever thought to pair her with anything. I had met Cass exactly once in my first life, briefly, at a border checkpoint during a trip to the Western Territories with Raina's delegation. Raina had treated her with the polite contempt that powerful alphas reserved for those they considered beneath consideration. Cass had looked at me once across the checkpoint line with sharp gray eyes and said nothing. But something about that look had stayed with me all 4 years of my first life like a stone in my shoe. A look that saw me rather than assessed me. I found her at a garrison training post 3 provinces over. I drove myself, which scandalized my mother, who called 4 times during the journey. I let the calls roll to voicemail. She was running drills in a dusty yard when I arrived. Tall, lean, commanding without effort, her dark hair pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles and quiet intensity. She was not beautiful in the architectural way that Raina Voss was beautiful. She was beautiful the way a thunderstorm was beautiful. You noticed her because ignoring her was physically impossible. She stopped when she saw me at the gate. Her second-in-command said something I couldn't hear. Cass dismissed the unit with a word and walked over. You're a long way from the registry, she said. I'm not going to the registry, I said. She studied me. Then what are you doing at a border garrison? Looking for someone who won't treat me like a transaction. The gray eyes did not soften exactly, but something shifted in them. That's a specific thing to come looking for. I'm a specific person, I said. I know what I want. I know what I'm worth. And I've decided I'm only going to spend both on someone who understands the difference between wanting an Omega and wanting me. We did not fall into each other easily or quickly. That was the first gift she gave me without knowing it. She did not rush, did not pressure, did not look at me with that particular alpha hunger that felt more like ownership than desire. She was curious about me. She asked questions and then actually listened to the answers. She argued with me about border policy over bad garrison coffee, and was visibly delighted when I argued back. I had to fight for the right to stay in the Western Territories. My parents threatened to report me to the registry as a compliance failure. The Vostok scouts came looking twice. The second time they came, Cass met them at the garrison gate alone and said 6 words that sent them back empty-handed. I never asked what those 6 words were. I didn't need to. The night Cass first reached for my hand, it was not at an altar or a ceremony or any of the politically sanctioned moments my first life had trained me to wait for. We were sitting on the roof of the garrison watch post at 2 a.m, watching a meteor shower that her sergeant had mentioned over dinner. Her hand found mine in the dark and stayed there. Warm. Certain. No negotiation, no ceremony, no silk bindings. I need you to know something, I said quietly, watching light streak across the black sky. Tell me, she said. I am never going to be decorative. I am never going to be quiet about what I want or what I won't accept. I am never going to fit into a political frame or a succession plan or anyone's idea of what a good Omega looks like. Cass turned to look at me. In the faint starlight, her gray eyes were steady and warm. Sirrah, she said. I am a border garrison lieutenant with a bad knee, a second-hand Jeep, and approximately 0 interest in council politics. Who exactly do you think you are warning? I laughed. A real one, the kind that came from somewhere deep and unguarded. I had not laughed like that in my first life. Not once. Her thumb traced a slow arc across my knuckles. For what it's worth, she said softly, the things you just listed as warnings? They're the reasons I didn't tell you to go home 3 weeks ago. I let Raina Voss come for me one final time. She arrived at the garrison in a convoy of 3 black vehicles, flanked by council aides and pack security. She stepped out in a charcoal wool coat and looked around at the dusty garrison yard with undisguised contempt. Then she looked at me, standing just outside the main building, and her expression shifted into something calculated and smooth. Sirrah, she said. You have caused a considerable amount of disruption. I know, Ed pleasantly. I intend to continue. Her eyes moved briefly to Cass, who was standing 3 feet to my left, relaxed and entirely unintimidated. Something flickered across Raina's face. You understand that your designation makes you legally registerable until your 25th birthday, Raina said, her tone the polished silk of someone who had won every negotiation they had ever entered. Your parents have filed a compliance order. I am prepared to honor your family's registration offer and resolve this quietly. And I, said Harrison Reed's voice from directly behind me, am prepared to file an immediate injunction citing the precedent of Omega Autonomy Clause 7, which as of last month's amended council ruling supersedes parental compliance orders where the Omega in question is over 18 and cognitively competent. Harrison stepped up beside me, his expression professionally pleasant. Miss Calloway is 20 years old, Alpha Voss. She is not your property. She is not her parents' property. She is a person? I would suggest the council's legal team brush up on the amended code before filing anything further. Raina stood very still. The mask did not slip, she was too controlled for that, but something behind the eyes flickered and went cold. She looked at me one last time. You could have been something, she said quietly. I am something, I replied. Just not yours. She left. The convoy turned around in the garrison yard, raising a small storm of dust that settled slowly in the morning sun. Cass's hand found the small of my back. Light. Present. You all right? She asked quietly. More than, I said. And I was. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I stood in the sun and felt its warmth all the way through. If Sarah's story hit you the way I think it did, drop a comment and tell me the moment that got you. Was it when she said I am something, just not yours? Or the meteor shower? I want to know. Hit that like button if you believe every Omega deserves to be seen, not assessed. Subscribe because we have 9 more stories in this series, and they only get more intense from here. I'll see you in the next one.